Hey, hello everyone. Can everyone hear me? Okay. So it's 10:03. We'll get started. I still see some people joining in, but let's get started. I'm quite happy to see so many of you here on a Saturday morning. Thanks for taking time out to attend this event. I'm Sneha. I'm one of the co-founders of Geek Trust. I will do a quick intro of Geek Trust and the event, which constitutes this weekend and the next weekend. And I will then be handing over to Neenu, who will walk us through some more details on the clean code. Starting with a small story. There's this person who's been a professor for 26 years. She wrote into our community sometime in July this year, saying, she wants to move into the IT industry, and she's finding it really hard because at most places her resume screening, she gets rejected at the resume screening because all her career so far, which is 26 years, she's been a professor. So she wrote this on our Geek Trust community forum. And this Monday, which is day after tomorrow, she joins a startup in Bangalore as their first lead machine learning engineer. And I'm quite excited to say that startup is Geek Trust. So what actually happened is when I saw that message, we asked her to write code on Geek Trust, like what we do with every other person who registers. Her code was good. So we were like, okay, let's interview her. She went through a couple of rounds of interviews. We liked her. And here she is. She'll be joining us this Monday as our lead ML engineer. So this is exactly what Geek Trust does. We connect technologists with interesting opportunities based on your code. We started in 2015. It's been 6 years that we're running Geek Trust now. We have 100 plus companies, 1,000 plus openings on our platform. And coming to this One Code weekend event, this is our flagship event. We started this in May this year, and we had a really good turnout. We did our second edition sometime in July, and now this is our most special edition. We're dedicating this to the world of wonderful women, which constitutes each one of us present here. We at Geek Trust are strong believers in diversity. We have a 53% women working at Geek Trust, and we are working towards growing that even more. This is a small insight into my own journey. So essentially, I come from an electrical engineering background. And during this campus placements, I got an offer from one of the big electrical companies. And then ThoughtWorks came to our campus, and a lot of my friends, especially from the computer science branch, were very excited, and they dragged me along. So I thought, okay, let me just see what happens, and I'll try and see what happens. I cleared about 2 or 3 rounds with ThoughtWorks, and then there was this coding round. And I still remember very clearly, I found myself in the middle of a computer lab. Everyone around me was writing code at lightning speed on their machines. And I was like, I don't even remember the syntax. The last I really focused on coding was during the first or second semesters. So I thought, let me just walk out of this. This is not my cup of tea. So I went to the panelist and I told him that, hey, look, I have no touch with syntax right now, so I don't think I'll be able to write this code. So I would like to back out. And I was just walking out of the door. And just as I was walking out, he's like, hold on. And he made me sit down and he said, you know what, just take this piece of paper and pen. And he said, just write down pseudocode, or how would you break this coding problem and go about coding. Don't worry about the syntax. Just write, how would you go about solving this problem? So I was like, okay, I wrote some pseudocode about, how to break down that problem, what methods and functions I would write. And then I had no hopes, and I gave that paper to him, and I walked out. But surprisingly, they did hire me, and I was just amazed at that process, because essentially what they were looking for is there potential? Can I learn things quickly? And that's how I got into ThoughtWorks. that I started my journey as a software developer at ThoughtWorks. That was just the beginning. I had a really, really uphill journey at ThoughtWorks because I found myself amid some of the smartest people in the industry. The people I was working then, this is 2009, are now CTOs and heads of engineering at some of the most well-known startups in Bangalore. So I had to put in a lot of effort, a lot of time to learn, catch up, and be as good as the others around me. But I absolutely enjoyed that journey. I really, really enjoyed that journey, and I learned a lot. After 6 years, I quit ThoughtWorks to start up Geek Trust with Krishnan and Dhanush. And I think I would like to say that I'm quite privileged to have worked at two places that take gender diversity very, very seriously. Now it's been 6 years at Geek Trust. I mostly look at product at Geek Trust. That's my son. I took a maternity break in 2019, and the entire team at Geek Trust made it really easy for me to get back to work. So when we started Geek Trust, I used to actually get intimidated sometimes, as the gender diversity in startups was quite bad. But over the last 6 years, I've seen this improving quite a bit. And today we have a lot of demand for women in tech. And hence that's one of the reasons we said, okay, you know what, let's do a women specific coding event. So this is a 2-weekend event. This weekend, we will focus on clean code and how we can get you started with the Geek Trust coding problem. And the next weekend, we will have company showcases, and we'll get to hear some more inspiring stories of other women in tech. In 2015, when we started, most of our audience was startups. And I remember we used to go, Krishnan, Dhanush and I used to go meet startups that time as our first few clients. And all I used to hear was, hey, we really want to hire, we want to grow our tech team. And what we're looking for is people from either IIT or IIM or people who've been in product companies before, who have seen scale. So these were the proxies that we used to hear, in 2015 when we met most startups. And I still remember this story very clearly, that one of the clients that we were working with wanted Ruby developers, and we gave them a very strong 10-year experience Ruby candidate with really good Ruby code. And the recruiter there rejected his profile just at the screening level, saying, just looking at his resume, saying, his 10th standard marks were less than 60%. And we were like, we believe the exact opposite. The philosophy that we believe is, if you can write good code, every single person deserves a chance. So what about a developer's code, showcases that this developer is good or not? We believe that is the ability to write clean code. And I'll not get into the details, because Nino will walk us through more on what is clean code, what all are the parameters that we look at when we say clean code. But fast forward now from 2015 to now, 6 years, a lot of companies are actually seeing value in this more and more, which is hire based on code, or essentially hire based on someone's potential and not their past. So that's what we help. So what we tell at Geek Trust is, you write code once. So the Geek Trust coding problem, you solve it once, and that will help you connect with multiple companies, because what you're trying to do is just showcase your code portfolio. And that's why we say, your code is your resume. Finally, this is Nino. She wrote code on Geek Trust last year, and she got a really good score. A lot of companies started showing interest in her profile, but she decided to stay put at her job until she got a mail from us, from Geek Trust, asking, if she would consider an opening at Geek Trust. And now she's a developer at Geek Trust. We are moving to a SaaS product this year, and Nino leads the product development on this SaaS stream. So yeah, over to Nino, who will walk us through the clean code concepts and what we think of clean code in detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Sneha. So good morning, everyone. My name is Nino. I'm a developer at Geek Trust. So I joined GeekTrust team last year. So I am one of those developers like you who has used this platform to find a job, and I eventually became part of GeekTrust team itself. So when I first heard about GeekTrust, I really liked the idea of finding a job by writing code. So I went ahead and checked out the coding challenges, and I understood that at GeekTrust they are not just focusing on our programming skills or on the output. Equal or more importance is given to how we write the code. So I focused a little bit more on the writing good code side, and I attempted a challenge and I managed to get a decent score. So today in the session, I will take you through some of the clean coding techniques, and I'll also share some details about the GeekTrust coding challenges and how you can score better in that. So let me share my screen. Hope you can see my screen. Okay, so to begin with, we should know what clean code is. So there are a lot of definitions, design principles, and characteristics to clean code. But broadly, in simpler terms, we can say that it is a code which any developer can read easily and change easily. So you would have heard Martin Fowler's reference to clean code. This is how he describes it. Anybody can write code that a computer can understand. Good programmers write code that humans can understand. And that's the whole point. Whatever code we write should be readable and understandable to others and to ourselves at a later point. And the next question is, why does clean code matter, or why is it so significant? So this is something every developer would have felt in their career. Did I really write this code? Even I have felt this many times when I look back at a code that I wrote a year back or even 5 to 6 months back. So this happens because after a few months, we will tend to forget what we wrote a few months back. And when we look back, we'll feel like it is a really fresh code that we are looking at. And we may even realize that what we wrote back then was a bad code. So by writing clean code, we are trying to avoid such situations. Yeah. And also, we as developers will be working on different projects. We often work on the code that is written by others. Also, tomorrow, someone else would be working on a code that is written by us today. So whichever company we join, whether it's Flipkart or ThoughtWorks or GeekTrust, most likely we will be asked to, we will be given an existing code base and we will be asked to build features on top of it. So it takes a lot of time to read, understand, and get started on a code base, especially if the code has been maintained for over years. So we will keep on adding features to a code, and over the time, the complexity of the code can increase if we have not maintained it properly. So imagine if the code is a big mess, we may not even want to work on it, or we may even feel like, okay, rewriting the code entirely would be better than trying to read and understand and to get started on it. So that is the reason why we are giving more importance to having clean code, because it will really help us to reduce the time to get started on a code base, and it will be really easy to maintain it going forward, and also it will be easy to add new features to it. So basically, a clean code will allow us to work on a code base much faster, and that can also help in a better team onboarding also. So we all work as a team, and that is really important that a new developer, when he joins, it is easy for them also to get started and get working on our code. So now the next question is, how can we get started on writing clean code? So I will take you through some of the important parameters that we consider while looking at your evaluations. So the first and most important parameter for clean code is the readability of the code. So always try to write readable code, and how we can write readable code is One important parameter that affects the readability is the naming conventions that we use. So always try to come up with meaningful names for variables, classes, and functions that we use. I'll try to explain with some examples here. If you look at the first example here, I have used a one-letter variable n, and it is assigned to some number. So here the problem is that n doesn't convey what the meaning of the variable is. We don't know what it holds actually. So a better name would be to give it something like a name like age or sum or years, which conveys its meaning. If you look at the next example, the variable is named as list. So list is actually a meaningful word. Then you may think, why is it marked bad here? That is because, yes, definitely list is a meaningful word, but it is too generic in this context. It's not descriptive enough. We don't know what list it is going to hold. So it can be either users or employees or students. So if you know that, it is better to give the name as descriptive. So try to be more specific in identifying the name for a variable. Similarly, if you look at the third example, it is a method name and it is named as handle click. So whenever we have a button in our application, we always tend to give names like handle click or button click or on click, like that. So I have also written like that. So the problem here is it doesn't convey what the action that is actually taken on clicking the button. So it'll be, so tomorrow if we introduce one more button, it can cause confusion. So it'll be better if we can name the method according to the action that is taken on the click. So if the button is present on a login form, and on clicking that, if you are going to handle login or authentication, try to name it with something like login or authentication user, something like that. So here is a line from the book of clean code. It says a name should tell you why it exists, what it does, and how it is used. If a name requires a comment, then the name does not reveal its intent. So we should always try to give a name which indicates why it exists and what it does. That is all about naming. I'll show another example. This is a small piece of code which does some condition check and performs some action. So if you look at this, it is not very readable. So I'll tell the problems in this piece of code. So first of all, the variable used here is p, which is a one-letter variable, which doesn't convey what the meaning of the variable is. Then we have this condition check, which we do not know what the significance of this condition is. Another problem is that there is some hard-coded numbers here, 4 and 16. Again, we don't know why specifically 4 and 16 is used here. So if we can address these problems, this code can become really readable and meaningful. So let's see how we can make this readable. So first of all, try to avoid magic numbers in your code. So magic numbers are nothing but the numbers that we randomly use in our code without specifying its actual meaning. For example, 4 and 16, we had used it in the code, but we did not provide its meaning. Also, if there are magic numbers that is scattered around in our code, if we want to change it in the future, we will have to go and change it in every place where it is used. Instead, if we are defining a constant like this, we will have to modify it only in one place, that is here. So now 4 and 16 represent that those are minimum and maximum password sizes. Similarly, another thing what we can do is, if the condition doesn't convey a meaning, like if it's a complex condition especially, we should try to extract it out into a variable or a function so that we can give it a proper name and that can convey its meaning. So here it was a password check, password length check, and I extracted it out into a function and named it properly so that the condition changed to is valid password check, and it brings meaning to the code. So the same function, now if we look at the condition, we will know exactly that the condition is for checking the validity of the password, and if it is valid, some action is performed. So this is one way we can make our code a little bit more readable. So here is another example, which is about keeping our code simple. So there will be many different ways in which we can solve one particular problem. But we should choose the simplest way possible. For example, I'll show an example. This is an example which introduces some unnecessary complexity. So here we are trying to filter the users whose name or email or role contains a search string. And this is the user model we have. A user will have ID, name, email, and role. And in this method, so one way to do it is, first we can filter the users whose name contains the search string, and it is taken in this variable filter by name. Again, users are filtered based on whether their email contains search string, and it is there in the variable filter by email. Similarly, users are filtered by whether their role contains the search string, and it is present in filter by role. And finally, we can concatenate all the three lists to get the combined list. But the problem then is it may contain duplicates, because those users whose name contains search string may also have the search string in their role. So the final combined list will have duplicates. So we should then remove duplicates by. That is what is done here. So this is one way to do it. So this function will work and it will produce the correct output all the time. But is this the correct way to do this? Or if you look at this, you may have already figured out why all this complexity is not necessary when we can refactor it to a 1 or 2 lines. Yeah, and that is the point. This function is bringing some unnecessary complexity to the problem. Let's see how we can refactor it better. Yeah, whenever we initially filter, the same time we can just or the filter by checking if the name or email or role contains the search string, and that is enough. So when we introduce some unwanted complexity in the problem, the time we will just simply waste on understanding the code and implementation, and it can also introduce some unwanted bugs. So this is one of the small examples, but for all other implementations, there can be different ways how one solution can be solved. So always try to choose the simplest way possible. So that was about keeping the code simple. Yeah, here is another example on the same topic. This is again a very small example. This is also talking about something that we do unnecessarily. So we have a array which contains some list of fruits like apple, orange, and mango. And what we are doing here is checking whether the fruits contain apple. So we have a variable here, and then this includes as a JavaScript method that checks whether an item contains in an array. So here we are checking if the array contains apple, and if it contains, we are setting the variable accordingly. So if you look at this, you may feel that this if and else and are unnecessary, because the result of this contains itself as a boolean which we can directly assign to this variable. So it can be refactored to something simpler like this. So we should always try to do not introduce unwanted complexity or unwanted implementation to our code. So yeah, that is about keeping the code simple. So the next thing for clean code is the modularity of the code. So we all organize our house, rooms, office, and everything. So similarly, our code also should be organized. So one way to modularize our code is to group all the related things together. So we should separate concerns into different groups. For example, view can be separate, models can be grouped together, services should be separate, and data layer should be separate. So, for example, service should not directly talk to database, or it should not have any logic that contains data accessing. Or any logic that is related to data access should go into data layer only. So if you have a problem or issue in data access, then we will have to fix it in one layer. So we shouldn't mix concerns together. We should try to keep everything separate. And then it will be easier to find things also in our code. And whenever there is an issue, we will know where to look. And yeah, that is why keeping our code is in modularized and organized way is important. Also, we can try to choose a suitable project structure that suits our application. And if we choose a structure, we should try to consistently follow it and stick to it while adding new features. So even if today we organize, tomorrow when we are adding a new data logic or something, it should go into that layer only. So we should try to stick to the convention that we choose. So another point here is the single responsibility principle, which everyone would know. The principle says that a function should do only one thing, and they should do it well. For example, if we have a function to add two numbers and return the sum, it should only do that. And tomorrow, if we want to introduce some other feature like subtraction, we should not change the existing function, or we should not add it to the same function. It should be separate. And the function should always return the same output given the same set of parameters. So, and the function should not produce any side effects. Those are the things that is said in this principle. And if we follow single responsibility principle, we will be able to write smaller functions. Or we can say that if our functions are growing too long, that will be indicating probably we are handling more than one thing or lot of things in the same function. So one good measure to see if our code is too long is to check whether they fit in our computer screen. If we have to scroll to read the entire function, then probably we should look at breaking it down to smaller functions. So having really long method also can affect the readability of the code. So we should always try to do only one functionality in a function and keep it smaller. So the next principle about clean code is the reusability of the code. So whatever code we write should also be reusable later. Like, for example, if we have a functionality that is repeating, let's say we have a feature to send email, and we have to use it when users sign up or for sending reports or for forgot password. So one way we will go about doing it is we can copy paste the exact piece in multiple places. And while implementing that may be easier because we just need to copy paste it everywhere. But later, if you have to make some change to it, or if there is a fix to be done in that part, we will have to modify it in every place that is used. So instead, what we should do is, if the logic is repeated or if it is required at multiple places, we should try to make it reusable by extracting it out to a function or a reusable component. Then we can use it everywhere. So similarly, when we design the classes for a solution, that also should be maximum reusable and extendable. Suppose when we get a design problem, we should identify the right object models and right classes and the right attributes for the classes and the right behavior for the classes. For example, let's take an example of an ATM machine system. And if you're asked to design a software to deal with that, to handle that, some of the classes we may come up with would be ATM or account or customer, card, all those. So usually how we will go about designing a solution is we will first have to identify some use case scenarios and then probably list out all the nouns coming in that situation and the verbs coming in that situation. And mostly the nouns will be get converted to classes, and all the verbs like withdrawal of cash or balance inquiry or deposit cash, those kind of things will be get converted to the behavior of the classes. And once we understand the problem and once we come up with the design models, we should again analyze it with the use case scenarios and see whether the solution is extensible and reusable. So talking about reusability, for example, in our case, we will have an account class and there will be different types of accounts like savings account or current account or like different types of account. So probably the behavior and some logic would be the common for those different types of account. And we can identify those common logic and behavior, and probably we can extract it out to one common base class, and we can use it to extend the specific classes. And any logic that is specific to each class can go into its own specific implementation. So that is how we should make classes and like behavior reusable in a design when we design a system. So we should also keep the design as generic as possible. And we should always consider like tomorrow this software is going to grow. So we should keep growth in consideration while designing a system. So our aim should be like to design a system which is capable of accommodating new functionalities to it without actually causing much impact to the existing features. Yeah, so that is about reusability. And drive principle is about do not repeat yourself. It is all about, the principle is all about removing duplication in our code. So if we have really reusable functions and components and design, then we will not have duplication in the code. So this is related to reusability. So whenever a logic is repeating, whenever a behavior is repeating, we should make it reusable so that we can avoid duplication. So the solution to avoid duplication is to come up with better functions and better classes. So that is about the reusability of the code. So the next thing I just wanted to bring it here is about writing comments. So some people have the habit of commenting their code. So some may do it as part of the documentation, and some may just like write comments in all the code they write. So ideally, the code should be self-explanatory. The code should be talking for itself. It should not require any comment to explain why that code is used. So if you look at this example, this is something which I showed previously. So we have this condition which doesn't convey the meaning, but we can add a comment to explain the condition, like check if password is valid. So this is definitely adding a meaning to this code. So now we know that this is checking the validity of password, but we should not do that. If we have a way to make our code cleaner, we should probably go for it rather than putting a command to hide the bad code. So that is the whole point I want to say here. So also, if the code is really meaningful, so if you look at here, it is clear what the condition is doing. Even then, some people will write this is for checking valid password. So which is actually not necessary. And so we can also avoid writing such unnecessary comments to our code because that is really unwanted. It can just take other developers time reading through all the comments also. So the point is we should not use comments to hide the bad code that we have written. So the next point I want to say is about giving proper indentation to the code. So in my opinion, having a proper indentation and proper line breaks and spacing can also help to make the code look clean. So that can also help with the readability also. And this is something which is very easy to do because all the IDEs provide automatic formatting options. So this is something everyone can do also. So if you look at this example, this is not as poorly intended and it's like less clear where it ends, where the blocks start and where it ends and all that. So if it's properly intended, it will help with readability. So another thing I wanted to say about maintaining clean code is to conduct code reviews. So even if we write good code or readable code, how can we ensure that it is actually good or is it readable? So the best way is to give it to another person to read. So that is what happening in code reviews. So yeah, even we can do self reviews, but that won't be sufficient because we just wrote it and we will know the intention clearly and we will remember the code and we may not realize the mistakes that we just wrote. So it is always better to have it reviewed by another person because they may even find an alternative, simple approach to solve the same problem, or they may even find some mistakes or obvious errors, like things we missed to handle while writing this. So it is always better to catch those errors and mistakes earlier rather than fixing a bug in production. So it is always good to have code reviews and that we should try to do peer reviews regularly. And it can also help with our learning also. So once we have a proper code review, we will learn from that. We'll learn a lot from that. And eventually that can help improve our total code quality and our knowledge also. So that is why code reviews are really important in maintaining clean code throughout our feature enhancements. So now we will look at some common code smells that we should avoid. So most of this are covered already, but even then we'll just go through it again. So one common code smell is writing really long methods. So like I said, we should not write really long methods, but we should try to follow single responsibility and try to break it down into smaller functions so that it is more readable and it will reduce the chance of errors also. And the method will also become more testable. We can unit test the methods better when it is small. And code duplication, yeah, we should try to avoid code duplication by writing reusable methods and classes. So whenever there is a logic that is repeating, we should not duplicate it everywhere. We should try to extract it out to a function and use it everywhere. So another thing is the use of misleading names. So misleading names is dangerous than actually meaningless names, because when a name means the exact opposite meaning, it can create a lot of confusion to whoever reads it. Even if the name is meaningless, only problem is the developer who's reading it will spend time in guessing what the real meaning is. But if it's misleading, it'll create a lot of confusion. So this is something we should try to avoid while naming. And then writing obvious comments. Like I said, if the meaning is clear and if we know what the code does is, we should not probably try to avoid about commenting them. So yeah, we can try to avoid writing obvious comments, and then try to also avoid the use of magic numbers in a code maximum. Because as I said, if you have to make some changes, one thing, it is not conveying its meaning, and if you have to make some changes to it, we'll have to modify it in multiple places. And suppose if we missed to remove it or change it in one place, it can cause other issues and it can lead to bugs. So the next code smell is to have one-letter variable names. Again, it will not convey the meaning of the variable, but it's okay to use one-letter variables for loop counters and all, because that is kind of widely accepted. In all other cases, try to name it properly instead of going with a small variable names or abbreviations like that. So another thing is about keeping code commented in our code base. We all tend to comment some code and when we rewrite something. Suppose we have a feature today and that was working, and tomorrow we are making some modification to it. First thing we'll go about and do is we will just comment the existing code and rewrite it after that. So we may even leave it like that. So what happens is it may stay there forever. It never gets deleted sometimes, because if I commented the code, some other developer seeing it may think that, okay, she commented it for some reason, she kept it for some reason, so I should not delete it. So it can stay there forever. So probably we should remove it and clean it up then. If we really require a code, we can always track it from the version history and use it. Similar is the case with dead code. So dead code is even not commented, but it is unused. So if we had a functionality which is obsolete now, that code becomes dead. And if we have some dead code, probably we should clean it up rather than keeping it in our code base. So that is all I wanted to share quickly about writing clean code. And now I'll share some details and the badges you have to earn while attempting a Geek Test challenge. So these are the badges you have to earn when you attempt the Geek Test challenge. So the first one is a correctness badge. So when it is for checking whether your solution is working or not, for producing the right output. So when you submit your solution, we run it against a set of test cases, and if all those pass, you will be awarded correctness badge. And next is the build badge. It is for providing the build script and build tool. So your solution should be buildable to create an executable and for us to verify the correctness of the solution. So if your solution is buildable and everything proper, you will get this badge. So the build instructions would be specific and different for each language. So how to build according to the language you have chosen, all those details are available on our help website and help documents. I'll show that in some time. Yeah. So the next badge you have to look for earning is the readability badge. So readability is nothing but how readable your code is. So if your code is readable and modular and extensible, you will get this badge. So yeah, and the next badge is the object modeling badge, and this is for identifying the right object models and identifying the right behavior and right attributes when you design the solution. So if your code is really extensible and if you have identified the right models, you will get object modeling badge. So I will just show the help website. So this is help.geektrust.in. So you will get all the help you need to solve a Geektrust coding challenge from here. So we have documented all the things in detail here. If you look at here, this will have all the documentation that can help you with how to earn each of the badges. For example, if I open how to earn readability badge, here it is explained in detail with example how to, like, what are the some common pitfalls that we usually see in code, and some examples of bad code and how you can make it better. All those are explained in detail here. So you can take a look at this documentation before you attempt a challenge. So similarly, the help you need to, like, in building your solution, according to each language specific, we have given the instructions here. So you can take a look at this and use it to generate your build. Yeah, that is all I wanted to say, share with you all today. So writing clean code is not a very easy task. It needs effort and practice. But if you start like practicing at least a few of them, you can actually really see the improvement in your code quality. So yeah, try to like start following at least a few of them, and that will definitely bring a positive change. So thank you for listening to me. So now Sneha will give you an overview of how to get started on Geektrust, and she will share the coding challenges with you all. Okay, over to you, Sneha.
Hey, thanks, Neenu. That was very insightful, especially the examples were very relatable. So thanks for that session. Let me just share my screen. Yeah, so just quickly, next steps wise, we will be sending you all an email right after this session with 2 coding problem links. There's a backend coding problem that's make space, and there's a front-end coding problem that's admin UI. So you need to solve only one problem. So you pick whichever you're strong at, backend or front-end, and solve just that one coding problem. Also, I saw some questions on chat where people were asking if I've already solved and I've got a good score, do I need to submit again? No, if you've already solved and you have a score of about 3, you don't need to submit again. If you want to improve your score, yes, you can go ahead and submit, but otherwise you don't need to submit again. So yes, pick any one, solve one problem. For help, like Neenu said, most of our help is available on our help site, which is help.geektrust.in. If you need additional help, you can mail us at help@geektrust.in, or you can WhatsApp us at this number. All these details will be in the mail as well that you will receive right after this. Once you're done solving the code, you can come to Geektrust. Once you log in, you'll see a submit code button on the top header. So you can go there and submit your code. Just a couple of final pointers. Once you've written your code, get all the source files, and you can either zip it or any of these formats, compress it. Do not include libraries, executables, or node modules. And for backend problems, when you go to submit code on the website, You can upload your code and test. So you can test multiple times, see what are the badges that you've done well, what needs more improvement. So you can keep improving and then submit when you're fully done. For front end, we don't have this feature yet in production. So for front end, once you're done, just follow the steps 1 and 2 and submit your code. Yeah. Finally, the submission deadline is next Sunday, 26 September, 8 p.m. is the final deadline. But across this week from today all the way till next Sunday, if you're done, you can submit code and get started. You don't have to wait till Sunday, but the final deadline for this event is 26 September, Sunday, 8 p.m. Yeah, that's pretty much what we had. Like I said, feel free to reach us on WhatsApp or mail if you need any more support. Yeah, I don't see any other questions. Cool. All right. Thank you so much.